Since the dawn of consciousness, humanity has been engaged in a fundamental war, not against external enemies, but against the very essence of existence itself, suffering. We build walls of comfort, construct elaborate distractions, and create entire industries dedicated to numbing the inevitable pain of being human. But what if I told you that this very act of avoidance is the source of our deepest misery? What if the path you've been desperately avoiding is actually the only road to authentic freedom? Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who dared to declare God dead and challenged every comfortable assumption of Western civilization, understood something that most people spend their entire lives running from. Pain is not the enemy of a meaningful life. It is its greatest teacher. In our modern world, we are conditioned to seek pleasure and avoid discomfort at all costs. We medicate our anxiety, distract ourselves from loneliness, and build elaborate defense mechanisms against the fundamental challenges of existence. This is the path of what Nietzsche called the last man, a creature so obsessed with safety and comfort that it has forgotten how to truly live. Over the next 14 minutes, we won't simply discuss philosophical concepts. We will descend into the depths of Nietzsche's most challenging insights and extract a practical manual for transforming your relationship with suffering itself. Prepare yourself, because the knowledge you're about to receive will shatter comfortable illusions and demand nothing less than a complete restructuring of how you understand human existence. This is not therapy. This is not self-help. This is philosophical surgery. Embrace the eternal return of suffering. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced in all its terrible magnificence. Nietzsche's concept of eternal return forces us to confront a terrifying question. If you had to live your exact life, with all its pain, disappointment, and struggle, infinitely, would you say yes to it? Most people recoil from this thought because they've been conditioned to see suffering as a malfunction rather than an essential feature of existence. Nietzsche understood that our attempts to eliminate pain don't eliminate it. They merely postpone it and amplify its power over us. The person who runs from suffering becomes enslaved to it, constantly organizing their life around its avoidance. Consider the fall of Marcus Aurelius' son, Commodus. Raised in the luxury of imperial Rome, shielded from hardship and given everything he desired, Commodus became one of history's most despised emperors. His father, Marcus Aurelius, had written extensively about embracing struggle and finding strength through adversity. But Commodus, protected from pain, never developed the internal fortitude necessary for leadership. When real challenges arose, he crumbled, becoming increasingly paranoid, violent, and disconnected from reality. His avoidance of discomfort led to far greater suffering, both for himself and for the empire. In our current age of endless comfort and instant gratification, we see this pattern everywhere. The person who avoids difficult conversations destroys their relationships through passive aggression. The entrepreneur who fears failure never builds anything meaningful. The individual who medicates every uncomfortable emotion never develops emotional resilience. First, practice voluntary discomfort. Take cold showers. Have difficult conversations. Pursue challenges that make you uncomfortable. Second, when pain arises, resist the immediate urge to escape it. Ask instead, what is this experience trying to teach me? Transform suffering into creative power. What doesn't kill you doesn't just make you stronger. It becomes the raw material for creating something unprecedented. Nietzsche's famous declaration about strength emerging from struggle goes deeper than mere endurance. He believed that suffering, when properly channeled, becomes the fundamental creative force in human existence. The artist uses pain to create beauty. The philosopher uses doubt to forge truth. The leader uses adversity to develop wisdom. This is what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but active embrace of life's challenges as the necessary ingredients for becoming who you are meant to be. Beethoven's deafness began in his late 20s, threatening to destroy everything that gave his life meaning. Most would have seen this as a cruel cosmic joke, a composer losing his hearing. But Beethoven transformed this devastating loss into his greatest creative period. His late compositions, written in near total deafness, are considered his masterpieces. He didn't overcome his suffering. He alchemized it into art that has moved millions across centuries. His Ninth Symphony, composed when he was almost completely deaf, contains the Ode to Joy, one of humanity's greatest expressions of triumph. Every successful entrepreneur has a story of failure that taught them essential lessons. Every strong relationship has survived and been strengthened by conflict. Every person of depth has used their pain as a forge for developing character. The question is not whether you will suffer, but whether you will waste that suffering or use it as fuel. First, keep a transformation journal. When you experience setbacks, write about what skills, perspectives, or strengths this challenge might develop. Second, study people you admire and identify how they transformed their greatest struggles into their greatest contributions. Reject the tyranny of comfort. Comfort is not the goal of life. It is the enemy of becoming. Nietzsche saw that modern society had created what he called the last man, a creature so obsessed with safety, security, and pleasure that it had lost the capacity for greatness. The last man asks, what is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? And blinks, having forgotten what these things mean. Comfort becomes tyrannical when it prevents growth. The comfortable person avoids risks, challenges, and the discomfort necessary for development. They choose the familiar over the transformative, the easy over the meaningful. The decline of the Roman Republic offers a perfect illustration. As Rome grew wealthy and powerful, its citizens became increasingly obsessed with luxury and entertainment. The circus and gladiatorial games became more important than civic duty. Citizens who once prized honor and service began to prioritize comfort and pleasure. This comfort-seeking didn't eliminate suffering. It made Romans vulnerable to internal corruption and external invasion. Their avoidance of the discomforts of citizenship led to the loss of their republic and eventually their empire. We see this everywhere in modern life. The person who stays in an unfulfilling job because it's secure slowly dies inside. The individual who avoids relationships because they might get hurt guarantees loneliness. The artist who only creates what's comfortable never produces anything that matters. First, regularly examine your choices. Are you choosing based on comfort or growth? Second, deliberately seek out experiences that challenge your assumptions and push your boundaries. Travel alone. Learn difficult skills. Engage with ideas that disturb your worldview. Become the author of your own values. In a world without absolute meaning, you must create your own. or remain forever enslaved to others' definitions of worth. Nietzsche's declaration that God is dead wasn't a celebration, but a diagnosis. He recognized that traditional sources of meaning and value were collapsing, leaving humanity in a crisis. But within this crisis lay an unprecedented opportunity, the chance to become what he called the overman, a being who creates their own values rather than inheriting them. This terrifies most people because it requires taking complete responsibility for your existence. It's easier to follow prescribed paths than to forge your own. Socrates chose death rather than compromise his philosophical mission. When offered the chance to escape execution, he refused, stating that an unexamined life is not worth living. He had created his own value system, one that prioritized truth and integrity over comfort and survival. His death became more powerful than his life because it demonstrated absolute commitment to self-created values. 24 centuries later, we still discuss Socrates, while the names of his accusers are forgotten. Most people live according to values they've never examined, seeking approval, accumulating possessions, following social expectations. They measure their worth by external standards and wonder why they feel empty. The person who creates their own values experiences authentic satisfaction because their life reflects their deepest convictions. First, write down what you truly value, not what you think you should value. Second, make decisions based on these authentic values, even when it's difficult or unpopular. We have established the fundamental pillars of Nietzsche's approach to suffering: embracing the eternal return of pain, transforming suffering into creative power, rejecting the tyranny of comfort, and becoming the author of your own values. You've learned that running from pain doesn't eliminate it. It amplifies its control over you. But this is only the foundation. What we've covered so far is the defensive philosophy, how to stop being destroyed by suffering. Now we enter more dangerous territory. The next principles don't just teach you to endure pain. They show you how to use it as a weapon for creating an extraordinary existence. These are not for those who want easy answers or comfortable lies. Practice voluntary suffering. The person who chooses their suffering controls their destiny. Nietzsche understood that we cannot eliminate suffering, but we can choose its form. The person who accepts voluntary hardship, physical training, intellectual challenges, emotional growth, develops the strength to handle involuntary suffering when it arrives. This is the difference between the victim and the warrior. Choice. The Spartan agog was a brutal education system where boys endured deliberate hardship from age 7. They slept on hard beds, ate simple food, and faced constant physical and mental challenges. This wasn't cruelty, it was preparation. When these men faced the Persian army at Thermopylae, their voluntary suffering had forged them into weapons that could not be broken. Their choice to embrace hardship early gave them the strength to choose their own fate in the ultimate moment. The entrepreneur who works 16-hour days, building their dream, is practicing voluntary suffering. The athlete who trains through pain is choosing their hardship. The person who has difficult conversations to improve their relationship is selecting their struggle. First, identify areas where voluntary challenge could strengthen you. Second, create daily practices that involve chosen discomfort, physical exercise, meditation, learning difficult skills. Destroy your false self. You must kill who you think you are to become who you actually are. Nietzsche spoke of the necessity of destruction before creation. Most people cling to identities that no longer serve them: the good student, the dutiful employee, the people pleaser. These false selves provide comfort but prevent growth. The pain of letting go of these identities is the birth pain of authentic existence. Buddha's journey illustrates this perfectly. Prince Siddhartha had everything: wealth, power, luxury, a beautiful family. But he recognized that this comfortable identity was preventing him from understanding the nature of existence. He voluntarily abandoned his palace, his title, and his security to seek truth through suffering. His willingness to destroy his false self, the comfortable prince, allowed him to discover his authentic nature and create a philosophy that has guided millions. The person stuck in a career that doesn't fit them must destroy their professional identity to find their calling. The individual trapped in toxic relationships must kill their people-pleasing self to discover self-respect. First, identify the aspects of your identity that you maintain out of fear rather than authenticity. Second, gradually challenge these false aspects through small acts of rebellion against your own patterns. Use resentment as fuel, not poison. Transform your wounds into weapons, your obstacles into opportunities. Nietzsche identified resentment, a deep-seated resentment born from powerlessness, as one of humanity's most destructive forces. But he also saw that this energy could be redirected. Instead of letting resentment poison you, use it as fuel for creating something better. Napoleon's rise from obscurity to emperor was fueled by resentment against the aristocratic system that initially rejected him. Rather than being destroyed by this rejection, he used it as motivation to reshape Europe. His wounds became his weapons. His exclusion from the old system motivated him to create a new one. The most successful people often have origin stories involving rejection, betrayal, or failure. They transform their pain into purpose, their setbacks into comebacks. First, identify your deepest resentments and ask how they could motivate positive action. Second, channel negative emotions into creative or productive activities rather than destructive ones. We have traveled through Nietzsche's most challenging insights about the nature of suffering and human existence. You've learned to embrace the eternal return of pain, transform suffering into creative power, reject comfort's tyranny, create your own values, practice voluntary hardship, destroy false identities, and alchemize resentment into fuel. Together, these principles form a complete system for what Nietzsche called becoming who you are. Not the comfortable version of yourself, but the authentic, powerful, creative being that emerges only through embracing life's full spectrum of experience. This knowledge is philosophical dynamite. It can be used to build an extraordinary life or to justify destructive behavior. The difference lies in your intention. Use these insights for self-mastery, not for dominating others. Apply them to create, not to destroy. Remember that true strength comes from conquering yourself, not from conquering others. The path of embracing suffering is not about becoming callous or seeking pain for its own sake. It's about developing the courage to face reality directly, the wisdom to transform challenges into growth, and the strength to create meaning in a universe that offers no guaranteed purpose. In the comments below, share the most difficult experience you've transformed into personal growth. Which of these principles resonates most deeply with your own journey? If this philosophical journey toward authentic existence speaks to your soul, Subscribe to continue exploring the deepest insights of human psychology and philosophy. Your like signals that this knowledge has worth and helps others discover these transformative insights. The choice, as always, rests in your hands. Will you continue running from the pain that could forge you into greatness? Or will you finally turn and face it as the raw material for becoming who you are meant to be?